So when I was young, I was given a very good piece of advice. Don't buy a boat or a swimming pool. Just make friends with people who own them. And I believe you can add another thing to that list for me, which is a pub.
This is Third Song In with Chris Derrickson and Tom Polachek.
Mike Trizna, in my opinion, can be justifiably introduced as the mayor of Joliet, Illinois. He is known universally in this area as Triz. Mike was born and raised in Joliet. I know he attended Joliet Central High School, and he is the owner of Chicago Street Pub. That was and has been my home away from home since 1993, I believe. Mike basically made himself into a music promoter by sheer force of will. He books bands to the pub from all over the region, the Northern Illinois, Chicago, but even stretching out into the Midwest and touring bands from around the country. He is also responsible for an outstanding outdoor musical festival that unfortunately no longer exists called Hopstring Fest. He's promoted and been very involved in concert events in and around the historic Rialto Theater in downtown Joliet, as well as outdoor events in the downtown area. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that he's married to his business partner, the lovely Kathy Trizna, who is clearly the most reliable of the two in that organization. As far as I'm concerned, Mike is a fixture in everything Joliet. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Yeah, you pretty much nailed everything. I've got a shady past, so you skipped over that. That works nicely. I don't know about Mayor of Joliet, but owning a bar does have its privileges, and one of them is meeting a lot of people for good or for bad. But yeah, the bar has been a stepping stone in life to what I don't know.
But still stepping.
But I'm still stepping, or maybe I have reached the peak, and here it is.
Well, we've known each other for, I was just thinking about it, like 30 something years at this point. And when we first met, you didn't own the pub. And in fact, it wasn't called Chicago Street Pub at the time. But I believe I met you when you were actually tending bar at Chicago Street Bar and Grill. Same location, same business, but different owner at that point. How did you move from kind of being a bartender around town, if I'm not mistaken, along with some other side gigs, to owning the pub?
Well, I went to the University of Illinois, and I always wanted to teach. And I was up in Chicago teaching. I was digging ditches for a sewer company. But while I was doing it, I was always bartending, knowing that I wanted to own a bar.
Huh.
So we have friends in common, John Condren,
Yep.
who was working there. And when I left one of the bars that I was working at, it was with the sole intention of, okay, now's my chance. I'm going to look for something. And the woman who owned Chicago Street Pub was kind enough to kind of take us both in. She literally took him in and fed him and gave him a place to stay. And then she figuratively took me in and groomed me a little bit. And this is going to sound weird, but it's very difficult to buy a bar because there's nothing tangible. It's not like a building. So Mary said, hey, I'll tell you what, you work for me for a couple of years, and if you don't quit and I don't fire you, I'll sell you the place on contract, no bank involved. So she was nice enough to do that. And after probably a little bit over 2.5 years, she looked at me and said, well, I'm tired of this. Give me some money. I'm out of here.
That was Mary, right?
Yeah.
I fondly remember Mary myself. She was the fixture of that place when I first moved to the area.
Yeah, it's funny because Bill and Jackie Kibler owned it for 10 years. Mary owned it for 10 years. And since Mary has sold it she sold it to John and I, and then my wife bought John out. But I've owned it for 20 years now.
I know.
So
Hell.
A lifetime ago.
Yeah, in fact, you've had a number of events early this year, celebrating your 20th anniversary. Because I don't know when you actually changed the name. Was that when you and John took over for Mary?
That was actually 20 years ago, January.
Yeah, that is something else.
Yeah, and the idea behind it actually was real simple. We didn't want, well, first of all, the signs cost $10,000. but John is very Irish in his heritage, and so we wanted to have a local tavern, but we always wanted to have an Irish influence. And pub comes from public house, and that's where people met up to vote and to talk about things in the area, for better or for worse. It's a meeting place, and that's what we wanted to turn it into, and that's the only reason we changed it from bar and grill to pub.
I am 59 years old, or will be this year, and never put together the fact that pub was short for public house.
I don't know if
Dude.
without John, but
So, Triz or Mike, what got you into the music biz? Like, what? I know that's cool. You said you wanted to own a bar, own a pub. What made you move towards booking music?
I was pretty lucky when I was growing up. This is going to sound backwards, but it's not. My mom and dad got divorced when I was very young, and so for my mom to be able to go back to school to support my sister and myself, we moved in with my grandparents. And my grandfather I'm sorry, one of the biggest music lovers I've ever met in my entire life. Sitting around the house when I was young, we would listen to one of his, and this is not an exaggeration because he left them to me, 4,000 albums. And they went anywhere from, 1910s and 20s bluegrass to 30s and 40s and 50s blues, 60s country. And then he actually got into rock quite a bit in the 70s. So his album collection was insane. And then even better, because my mom worked days and went to school at nights, we kind of had the run of the house. And so if he decided to take me to a club, even though I was 10 or 12 years old, to a club, I sat in the corner and listened to the blues or the country and went from there.
Geez, do you still have those LPs?
I do.
Oh my God. I had no idea that you had a collection like that at all. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's, I'm not tone deaf, but I've tried to play instrument after instrument. I can't do it. So I'm so happy that I was able to fall in love with the things my grandpa loved. It made growing up really nice. I know we're not going to show anything on the podcast, but later on I'll show you. I have a collection of about 2,000 or 3,000 CDs myself, and maybe another 100 or 200 records. But one of my friends passed away, and he knew he was dying, and he gave me another 2,000 CDs. That does not make my wife a happy woman.
Oh, yeah. Where the hell do you put them without getting divorced is my question.
Well, I gave away our entire 100-year-old dining room set to a family friend, and our dining room is now an entire music room.
I had
Wow.
no idea. Jeez, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's an incredible collection, but I have to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you have Night Ranger's Midnight Madness in cassette form?
I don't do. I wouldn't be surprised if I did at one point. One of the concerts I went to when I was young was Night Ranger, and they got booed off the stage because they opened with Sister Christian, played it in the middle, and ended with it.
That's exactly how I think about Night Ranger.
Yeah,
That's funny. And I only raised that because it's literally sitting on my desk. My mom must have cleared out a bunch of crap at home and she sent that to me. And I'm like, what am I going to do with a cassette? Like we talked about this before. I bought a CD at a concert that I went to. I don't even have a place to play that.
Let alone a cassette player.
Let alone a cassette player. So
I think the I own is a Material Issue, and that was a gift from the music store across the street.
That's awesome. I always I've wailed before about the fact that I bought a Material Issue LP from a show they played at a tiny little basement bar in St. Louis, and I can't find the album anywhere. It was one of those. It was pink vinyl. It was a special edition.
I can't remember the name of it's like Caddyshack, the fraternity for golfers, for golf caddies. We were in the basement of that house. Material Issue was playing, and the guitar player threw his guitar up thinking he was outdoors.
Oh,
hit the ceiling with it, and you could see the water pipes burst, the plaster falling. They got off stage just in time for the ceiling to cave in on them.
Oh my God. And you saw all that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh
I think it was 90, maybe 89 or 90 down in Champaign. And I bought one of the blue I bought one of the blue 12-inch albums.
Yes, isn't that something? And I can't find it anywhere. I'm afraid I gave it away and didn't even realize what I was doing.
You probably left it.
Well, let me ask you this. So the pub, officially known as Chicago Street Pub, started 20 years ago. How soon after you took over ownership did you guys start having live music there? Because I know from my own experience that there really wasn't much in the way of live music in that place before you took over.
So when Mary had it, she did a little bit of Irish music from time to time. She had the Hatfield sisters. She had John Condon, my first business partner. So the stage was set, so to speak. But then I remembered some friends that I had in high school. Brent, who I believe you had on before.
Yeah.
Hillbillies. We got him down to do some acoustic stuff. And then he brought one of his friends. And then I had another friend from college. And there's an opening by the front that used to just be doors you could walk in. And I got a hold of a couple carpenter friends, and we actually physically built a 13 by 10 foot, 1 foot high stage, not knowing what we were going to do with it. We had some tables on it. We did. And then we sort of fell into some equipment. I don't know if it fell off a truck or if somebody gave it to us. But once we had it, it was a lot easier to get some really good musicians, because musicians who don't have to travel with their instruments are a lot more likely to play for less money. So we started right away, probably 6 months into owning the bar. We started booking music once a week, and that built up to 2, 3, 4. And right now we're probably 4 times a week we're doing live music.
And to my knowledge, there's not a place really in this area that has live music as often as you do.
No, there isn't. And not only that, but we found out that, what is Will County where we live? I believe 1.5 million people.
Sounds about right.
We're the only bar that won't book a band unless they write their own music. Now, we allow them to play some cover songs. That's not a big deal because we pay ASCAP and BMI and CSAC. But if they don't write some of their own music, we won't book them.
That's cool. I guess as I look back, I should realize that, because it always does seem to be original, music bands that play there. But I didn't realize that was a policy of yours. And yeah. I've seen some great bands there, and I've seen bands that I'd never heard of before who have gone on to be at least regionally successful. But you definitely also get a lot of people that come back, and I assume one of the reasons is because you always get a nice little crowd, and clearly you take care of the musicians when they're there. Do you have any favorites that have gone through that either play regularly or that you only got for that one time?
Yeah, actually, and I'll tell you what, I'll name some of the bands that are my favorites, but also have gone on to bigger and better things and still come back.
Yeah, yes.
So I'll actually start with Miles Nielsen and the Rusted Hearts. Miles is the son of Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, and his band literally grew up in the footsteps of John Lennon and Gene Simmons and Journey. They went to house parties with these guys. They were kids,
right,
but they were at house parties when these guys were playing. And so you'd think that the son of the guitar player from Cheap Trick would sound like Cheap Trick, but they sound just as much like John Lennon as they do Cheap Trick because of the influences they grew up with. Now, Miles has his own band. He is also he sits in with Cheap Trick from time to time when they're missing someone. They also have a new band called the Nielsen Family Trust. And that is Rick Nielsen, Miles's brother, and Miles's wife, and probably a couple other musicians that I don't know. But my point is they're way, way out of my price range now. And he let me know a long time ago. He said, "Hey, you booked us when nobody knew us. You treated us well. You put us up. We'll be back." And I had Miles as recently as January.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Just amazing set of musicians. Amazing. We had another band, the Steepwater Band. Their frontman, Jeff Massey, is one of the most talented guitar players. And that's saying a lot considering I've seen, several thousand bands. Steepwater Band, they went from making $300 a night to now they're making $10,000 or $12,000 a night. And fortunately, they still come back to Chicago Street for something that is reasonable, not the not the 300, not the 10,000.
That's great.
And they a couple of years ago, they've opened for the Black Crowes, who they sound a bit like several times. And the Black Crowes producer Mark Ford has produced them. And most recently, they actually got invited to and played at the United Center opening for Bon Jovi.
Wow.
So really good. And Chicago Farmer is a musician from Central Illinois who he's open for Todd Snyder. He was a pre-opener for Willie Nelson, been around the block. Just had him in January as well. These are all bands that I booked 17, 18 years ago that have stayed in the business, made it, like you said, moderately successful, regionally successful. And because of the setup we have and what we're able to offer, they keep coming back.
Yeah, that's great. And I've seen all three of those at one point or another. Frankly, the first two bands, I don't even go to the pub very often anymore to see them, only because it's so crowded and I'm too old and cranky to stand in the back on my feet for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yeah, give me a call, we'll get you in.
I do have a little bit of pull there, I guess. I mean, usually I get a seat in the back at the very least.
That's the best part. It's by the bar.
Yes, exactly.
You know, so obviously the Righteous Hillbillies, because of Brent, they play there a lot. And they've gone on, they've opened for the Marshall Tucker Band. They opened for Los Lobos. They've gone on to some reasonable success. They're amazing people. They've had a couple of guitar players in and out. And Brent always seems to find the people who jive with him the best. He doesn't just go out and find the best player. He finds somebody who fits in the best. Mm-hmm. John Condren has had several bands. They have obviously played there the most because of our relationship with the business. But there's somebody else I'm forgetting. The Brothers Footman, actually 6 siblings from Indianapolis who they call their music summer music. Some of this, some of that. They'll do it like mostly R&B and rock and roll music they write. But they've gone on and done some covers like the Beatles and Tiffany. And nice. They just joke and joke and joke. But talk about success. Last year, they did the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Weekend.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, that's really cool.
Yeah, they're doing bigger and better things. And I just talked to Dikembe. What a bunch of names, Dikembe and Bubby, and they're great people. But they'll be back this summer as well.
That's the band that you personally have texted me almost every time they've been through, and I've yet to see that band play. And I promise the next time they're through, we're gonna figure out a way to get there.
They're amazing, and they all of the brothers in the band, they do something very interesting. They will yell "stop" in the middle of a song, and they'll turn in circles and then go pick up a different instrument and play. As it turns out, every member of the family plays every instrument in the band, and they can all sing lead.
That sounds like a very entertaining thing to watch, if nothing else.
Yeah, they're crazy, and they're also fun to be around when the show's over.
So Tom and I in college, worked our way through working at bars. And had some crazy stuff happen that we've told these stories for years. You've talked about all the highlights on the music front. Are there any lowlights that you're willing to share, like the craziest stories that have happened or your favorite stories that have happened at the bar itself?
Yeah.
You can plead the fifth on certain things, you may want to avoid the anything involving law enforcement. That's up to you.
All right. Yeah, we'll do that. Musically, there was a time when there was, I think, a band from Chicago, but I had an opening band from upstate New York, and the crowd from Chicago was just talking over the opening band, talking and talking and talking. So I actually got up and, asked them for their attention. It was rude. It was incredibly rude. You couldn't hear the band. We couldn't turn them up any further. And somebody threw something at me. And this is a tiny little bar. We hold 100 people. And I looked at my wife and got a big smile on my face, and she shook her head, no, 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 no. So I shut the lights down and I physically escorted the first three people in the row out. And then I turned the lights back on after nobody saw what I was doing, and I kicked everybody out. I called a couple of friends, and we finished the concert with the band from upstate New York.
Really?
Throughout the band from Chicago, didn't let them play again. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some highlights, and I've got a lot of them, but like Tom said, they're probably not for this podcast. Got a band from Missouri that comes up. They call themselves Johnny Lawhorn and the Pentagram String Band, and they consider themselves Devil's Bluegrass. Well, they travel with a band called Abraham and the Old Gods, who call themselves Christian Bluegrass. And it might be one of the funniest sticks I've ever seen in my life. They are hysterical. One opens for the other, or vice versa. They travel together. And if they're serious, it's hysterical. If they're not serious, it's even funnier.
That's great. You guys got to tell me the next time they play together. That sounds like it'd be a show in and of itself.
It is, and it's almost Abraham and the Old Guys is folk punk, but Johnny Lawhorn is, if it's possible to play thrash metal on a banjo, that's what he does. It's very entertaining, almost like Primus. Yeah.
I want to hear that. And you know what? It's funny, as we started saying that we're all getting old. I have to glance down at your name every time, Mike, to make sure that I say it right. And you're recalling the names of all these bands like out of nowhere. It's like super impressive.
Well, and that's 14 concussions later too. I did a lot of rugby in between the music.
So the other thing that I mentioned in my introduction of you was Hopstring Fest.
Yes.
Which is near and dear to my heart. Chris and I did an episode early last year, I think, about music festivals and how much we love going to music festivals. And I brought up Hopstring Fest as my certainly favorite local fest, but one that really I thought captured the idea as well as any of the giant ones that I've been to, like Jazz Fest or what have you. In fact, in a lot of ways, I thought it was more fun because it wasn't so overwhelming and it wasn't, elbow to elbow necessarily. But you were getting good crowds to Hopstring Fest, and I don't remember exactly how many years it went on. But tell me a little bit about how that came about and then the unfortunate demise of the festival.
Sure. So my grandfather and grandmother used to take me to, I think Des Moines. I was young, to the Big Spiderbeck Festival, and on the river, beautiful scenery, and it felt a lot more like a block party than it did a festival. And I kind of remembered it and remembered how much fun I had, and maybe it was historical thinking because I was with my grandparents. Who knows? But everything I remembered about it is what I tried to recreate. And so we did. I think we did it 6 years. First year we had about 700 people. The sixth year we had between 7,000 and 9,000 people. I didn't get an exact tally because after halfway through we just let people in without tickets. But my philosophy behind it was, I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of help in my career, and a lot of the artists and musicians and food vendors don't get a lot of help. They opened up on a shoestring budget. They got together without knowing what they were doing. And so the least my wife and I could do is give them a venue. So that's basically what this was going to be a concert that doubled as a venue for artists, jewelry makers, musicians who weren't performing but had stuff to sell. And we literally, the first 4 years, kept it 100% local, nothing north of Chicago, nothing south of Champaign. Or forgive me, I guess Bloomington. I'm sorry, not Bloomington, Carbondale. So we had, I think, 8 people on the main stage, 8 bands on the main stage, 8 bands on the side stage. We had maybe 6 or 7 actual physical artists, whether they be sculptors or painters or drawers, illustrators. Heck, we even had local sword swallowers and flamethrowers, and I mean, just
Yeah.
I don't want to call it a freak show, but circus atmosphere. None of the food was brought in from outside of Joliet. All of the stands were Joliet. I didn't charge. I'm sorry, my wife and I didn't charge anybody for anything. All of the stands that came in and set up, they made 100% of their money, and we didn't charge them for the booth. I think it went really well. Everybody had a great time. And then one of the last years, we realized we were doing so much extra money that we wanted to spend it on something big. And that's when we decided on one side, we did a circus sideshow. And then our main act that year was Cracker, who has 2 gold albums. And I'm pretty proud of myself for being able to do something with almost 10,000 people that was with nothing but local people.
Right, because as I understand it, one of the cool things about that festival was that you hosted it at Joliet's minor league baseball park.
Yes.
A relatively new facility, particularly at that time. It was almost brand new, I think. And you didn't do anything, excuse me, you didn't do anything on the field, but like a lot of minor league ballparks, there's this kind of cool area outside the outfield where there was like a kids park and there was a nice grassy hill, and you were able to set up the stage kind of behind center field. And it was just a really cool place to go on a nice summer day to see all this stuff. But I also got the impression that you weren't, other than using that facility, you weren't getting a lot of outside help from anyone in terms of setting it up or running the thing or tearing it down when it was all done.
Yeah, and like you said, there's let's say there was 5,000 people at the middle one. There were maybe 6 friends, me and my wife, and the general manager for the team actually came out at 5 o'clock in the morning when I was setting up and mowed the grass.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he has gone on to bigger and better things. Chris Franklin is now the general manager for the AA affiliate for the Cubs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I never asked the city for any help, but they certainly didn't give me any. I never asked the Slammers for any help, but the owners certainly didn't give me any. And the last year we were there was a lot of what you just said. It became too much for a couple of friends to put together. And I mean, literally, moving 800-pound pieces of equipment and cleaning up, and literally every beer cup, every napkin, cleaning up off the field. Fortunately, and I'm not disparaging anybody from the past, but fortunately there is new ownership who used to own the White Sox, coincidentally. The Vec family, Night Train is one of the owners, and he is Mike Vec's son. We have had brief discussions about bringing it back next year.
Oh boy, my heart just skipped a beat, man. That was absolutely the highlight of my summer for however many years you guys did it. I always made a very specific point of getting there early, planting my flag and getting my seat set up, and then staying until the very end. Nice. That would be fantastic to see that come back.
I'm hoping. Well, so in front of my bar for the last 2 years, there has been nothing but construction. Joliet is completely redoing its 70-year-old infrastructure. So the sidewalk in front of me you could look down and see 20 feet below because it's an old ComEd vault. The street, they have redone the sewer, the water, the cable lines, the electricity, everything. So it's been a nightmare for 2 years to try to keep the business open, which fortunately we've been successful at doing. However, one of the perks about this is that years ago, they tore down the state's attorney building and built a parking lot. They're turning the parking lot into a green space with a stage. And I've had some conversations with the City Center Partnership and the CED and the city. And if everything works, when this is done, I'm going to be able to run one of the first events there. And when I do, I don't necessarily know if I'll do Hopstring Fest, but I'll do something similar.
Oh, that would be great. That would be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to that. I know you've been taking a beating the last 2 years because of all the construction. And all I can say is when you look at the artist renderings of what it's supposed to look like when it's done, it should be great. And we just got to make sure we keep you guys running until we get to that point.
We'll take any help we can get.
That's our first music festival, Tom.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the next one we go to.
I will have you come up and crash at my place, and we'll spend our day at Hop String 2 or whatever it may be called.
Excellent. And I'll give a shameless plug here. If we're lucky, when you come up, one of my partners will be Harris Casino, and we'll get you a room there instead of staying at Tom's.
Yeah, that might be better.
Yeah, which is also a block away from where we're going to be, so it's walking distance. But the only reason I brought it up is because recently I've had a lot of out-of-town bands, Missouri, upstate New York, Florida, North Carolina. I know Milwaukee's not very far, but it's still, several hours. And more times than not, I have been able to get a hold of Harrah's, let them know what we're doing, and they've put the musicians up for us.
Is that right?
Yeah, we so like I said, shameless plug to keep them on the good side, but they've been absolutely fantastic. I make sure to mention them on our website and Facebook and every chance I get, but it has really helped get some bands that I otherwise couldn't afford because I'm able to keep them here. That's another $300-400 that they don't spend and I don't have to pay them.
Wow, that's great. I wasn't aware of that. And that is good news because I love the fact that we have, a music venue that people stop at on their way touring, across the country. So that's great to hear. Speaking of shameless plugs, that seems like a good time to throw a couple our listeners' way. You mentioned your website. The Chicago Street Pub's website is www.chicagost.com. So CHICAGOST.com. You can search Chicago Street Pub on Facebook and other social media, but I think Facebook is the best place to find future dates and who's playing when at the pub.
Absolutely.
And I got a list from you. There are a number of things coming up in the near future. This episode should be dropping. I'm trying to find my date.
March 3rd.
Yep, March 3rd is when you should be listening to this. If you listen to it right when it comes out. Looks like on March 7th at the pub, Chicago Blues Angels are playing. March 10th is Steal the Pint Night with Guinness, which you may have to explain in a moment. March 14th is Gavin Coyle. March 17th is the St. Patrick's Day party. John Condren is playing. I know Chicago Street's St. Patrick's Day celebration is one to remember. It's usually a big deal. I probably should have you talk a little bit about that as well. But basically, the best thing to do is go to chicagostreet.com to look for all the dates and all the bands and other events that are going on at the pub practically every day of the week.
Yeah, and you know what? Just briefly, the Steal the Pint Night is every Monday night at 7:30. We have traditional Irish music, and it's not even on the stage. It's right in the middle of the pub. We get anywhere from 5 to 12 musicians. We've had up to 20, but 5 to 12 musicians on a normal day. And they play, the pipes and the bow run and guitar, and they sing. And it's an amazing time. Doesn't cost anything. People just sit around and clap and drink Guinness. Well, we have a new Guinness rep. And when she came in, she's from Ireland, and she found out how much fun it was. And so she said, I'm going to bring a couple of cases of glasses. And so when you pour people Guinness, they don't have to give it back. They can just take it home with them.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
So we're actually, and so she's done, the different animals, the penguins and the polar bears on the glasses. She brought us some Notre Dame ones recently. And she said that what she's bringing this time is a one-off. Guinness produced them and they'll never produce them again. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the St. Patrick's Day party, because again, I know that is a big deal.
So we spend the 2 weeks prior to St. Patrick's Day. Last year we cooked 700 pounds of corned beef. We slow cook it for 9 hours, take it out of its juice, put it in a bucket, put it in the cooler, in its own brine. 2 days before St. Patrick's Day, take it out, slice it, put it back in its own brine, and then the day of cook it. So it's actually cooked and brined 3 times. So
That sounds
hopefully
awesome.
we'll go through all set. We went through all 700 pounds last year. We open at 11. Music, we'll play Irish music all day, but the actual live music this year, because it's a Monday, will start at 4. And we have the ability to stay open till 2. I won't be there that long. I would say on average, the music will go probably 6, 7 hours this year, probably 6. And we are taking a couple of reservations for large groups that have been there in the past. But besides that, we're just randomly open to the public, and anybody who wants to show up can show up.
Excellent, excellent. That's another one that's gotten so crowded that I haven't made it the last couple of years, but I do like the corned beef, so I may have to break my streak and head down there this Monday's St. Patrick Day on the 17th.
Yes. And then actually, a lot of people are doing stuff over the weekend. We've got non-Irish goings on the Saturday and Sunday prior, but the Friday prior, we have Gavin Coyle. Gavin Coyle is probably has the truest, most beautiful voice I've ever heard in all 20 years of being at the pub. And after he played, I did a little research on him, and easy to find out why. You've heard of American Idol?
Sure.
He won Ireland's version of that.
Oh, wow.
The All Ireland singing competition that was on television, and he competed in the Eurovision. I don't know if he's ever not placed in a singing event he's ever been in. Truly one of the most talented, beautiful voices I've ever heard. He'll be playing at 7:00 that Friday prior.
So the other thing I know you've been involved in, Mike, in the past is music at the historic Rialto Square Theater in downtown Joliet. Anybody from this area knows about that theater. In fact, my wedding reception was in the rotunda of the Rialto Theater. It is absolutely a beautiful facility, and it is. We've had some amazing musical acts that have come through and played there. And as I understand it, you've been involved both in bringing some individual acts, and then there have been some kind of festival-like events that have gone on. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement with Rialto these days?
So the Rialto is kitty corner from our bar, so it's about 200 feet away. It's called the Jewel of Joliet. It's been around for about 100 years. Matter of fact, I think they're coming up on their 100th year anniversary. About 2,000 seats, so you can't get all of the huge acts that you can at some of the 8,000 seat auditoriums. But they've had John Prine, Willie Nelson. Back in the day, they had Charlie Chaplin and Abbott Costello, the Three Stooges. That's how far back it goes. Most currently, they've had Chicago and REO Speedwagon. So I was talking with Val Devine when she was general manager there, and said, "Hey, you know what? I'd love to do a CD release party for a local band. I bet I could bring 400 or 500 people." Well, as it turns out, I did a double CD release, and we brought 1,000.
Ah, nice.
River Horse and John Connor and the Old Gang Orchestra. And since then, they allowed me for about 2 years. They allowed me to do every other month. What we did was we called it Local Music Monday, and we did a performer from Joliet, a performer from Will County, and a band from Illinois. And we probably averaged about 800 people, which is the entire first floor. They all went very well. Tickets were only $20. The bands got 100% of the money. It worked out really well. I think we ended up doing 10 Local Music Mondays, 5 CD release parties with full bands on weekends, which is crazy for a place like that to allow a local guy to do a weekend. And then we actually did a couple of beer bashes where we had all of the local breweries come in, and we had some bands playing and people able to sample everything. They've been an amazing partner. They're under new management, and we're in talks to start bringing back Local Music Monday again.
Great.
So I'm hoping that works. Wade is very easy to deal with, very nice guy, and I think that we might be able to get that going this fall as well. They've been a great part of the community, and there'd be a lot of places in downtown that wouldn't be open if it weren't for the amount of people the Rialto brought down on a yearly basis.
And I really think this new construction, as much of a pain as it's been, particularly for the small business owners like yourself and the folks across the street, again, when you look at what that green space is supposed to look like, and it's directly across the street from the Rialto, between that area and the Rialto and your place, the record store that's across the street that I know does live performances occasionally, I think Joliet could really be a great kind of focal point for live music and other entertainment in downtown Joliet going forward. I'm really hopeful for that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that down the street there's a 600 person venue called the Forge, and they're bringing a lot. They're bringing a lot of heavy metal, some comedy. You know what they are is they're bringing diversity. They're doing some hip hop. They're bringing diversity in music to downtown Joliet, and we even get some of the people walking down for dinner. This, actually, this is something that I should have mentioned earlier, Chris and Tom. I'm sorry. This is 2 years ago. We had a country band. The Rialto had Chicago, and the Forge down the street from us had Insane Clown Posse.
That's a diversity of music right there.
The people that came to the bar for dinner, looking at each other and talking to each other, was absolutely hysterical.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really good. Yeah, the Forge is a place that you would probably end up having we'd have to go, Chris, when you come to visit, because again, very, very kind of heavily metal skewed. Although again, you see some hip hop acts there, some rap acts there. I saw Super Suckers there, and there must have only, for that show, for some reason, I bet you there were only about 100 people. It was amazing. We were standing practically on the stage.
I saw them. So they played 3 years ago or 4 years ago, and they played last year. And I saw them last year there as well. And I don't even know if there's 100 people, which is insane.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and we saw a band called Metalachi, heavy metal mariachi band. They were, if you get a chance, look them up. They were amazing.
I gotta check that out. That's very funny.
I don't even think I could have thought of mariachi and metal going together. I love
me either.
Absolutely hysterical.
Well, Triz, that takes us to sort of the key part of our show when we have guests, which is putting together a special playlist. This playlist will be available on all the various streaming services that we put them out on, which include Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon, and Apple. And we always ask our guest for the theme for the playlist that we do, and you have chosen post-punk, which I think is or pop punk, a little bit of either, but it was a challenging one for me because it wasn't something that actually, as I dove into it, I think I did listen to a little bit more than I realized, but it can be a pretty broad category, but it's a cool one. So do you want to start us off with your first choice?
Sure. I think the first one I picked was the Violent Femmes, Please Do Not Go. They were the first band at 16 years old that I was allowed to go see without an adult around, which was probably a bad decision by my mom.
She might not have listened to the lyrics before she let you go. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. She knew my taste in music varied, and she was really good about allowing me to venture off from time to time.
That's a great band. We've talked about the Femmes in the past for sure.
We have. All right. So my first choice, and as I tend to do, even though we don't do a lot of preparation for the shows, I do dive into the songs that I pick. Is Lost by the Meat Puppets from their 1984 album, Meat Puppets 2. What I love about this era is a lot of these bands were hated when they came out by what was going on, especially the punk audiences. And there's a great review of this album back when it first came out, how much they were hated originally by punk audiences, and also how so much of what they did was influenced by the lead singer and founder wanting to be as high as possible all the time. So.
I love it.
All right, my first choice for the playlist, I went post-punk, and I went with the band The Clash from London Calling, which came out in 1979. The song I picked was Jimmy Jazz. Ooh. And the reason I picked that one was because I always kind of thought of the Clash as being punk, but when you Google them, when you look them up, they're generally considered to be post-punk. And this song from this very, I think, popular album, or at least popular for the Clash, is probably why or one of the reasons why, because it's not particularly punk when you listen to it. It's got kind of a swing to it, and there's much more musicianship than in the classic, like Ramones type punk, where they barely knew how to play their instruments. But I think it's a really fun song, and I thought for the theme of post-punk and pop-punk, it kind of fits in pretty well. So Jimmy Jazz from London Calling by The Clash is my first pick for the playlist, which brings us back to you, Triz.
All right. I love both Meat Puppets and The Clash. I would put The Clash in probably my second favorite band of all time.
Ah, nice.
So my second song, and it might have been my first one, I don't remember. I might have mixed them up, but it is The Dead Milkmen, and it's a song called Take Me Apart. I had a really tough time picking. I was going to pick The Dead Milkmen no matter what, but I had a really tough time picking songs. The reason I picked this song is because when I was, again, I might have been 14, we had to do a video to try to get a scholarship to get into college. And our video was a movie about schizophrenia. And although the song Take Me Apart is about depression after a breakup, I had twins in my class. And so we were able to take the lyrics, Take Me Apart, and have one twin playing the good schizophrenic and one twin playing the bad schizophrenic. And the lyrics happened to work perfectly for what we did. And so, with all of the Dead Milkmen songs I love so much, this one holds a place in my heart a little bit higher.
Wow, that's pretty impressive for some 14-year-olds. That's some filmmaking right there.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's one of my favorite stories is using Social Distortion's version of Ring of Fire in the interview to get the registrar job at UNC. So
I love
I was a little bit older at that time, but all right. So my second choice in the post-punk or pop punk, I went with another hated band apparently at the time, Rank and File, and their song "Old Old Man." Or sorry, I'm an old man, which I think is just fitting for the three of us. No offense, Tris. It's a cover of Lefty Frizzell song, a pretty solid one. Rank and File, I didn't know a whole lot about until I went and saw Alejandro Escovedo in Annapolis. He played in this listening room, and apparently they had instructions to sort of keep it, a little down low. And he started off with a Rank and File song, and he said, we were told to keep it a little quiet, but fuck that, and just like, raw, he just went. So it was a great show. He ended up doing a lot of acoustic stuff. I think he had actually left the band by the time they put this out. This is from 1984's Long Gone Dead. So I'm an old man.
My second choice for the playlist is Longview by Green Day from the album Dookie, which came out in 1984. This is a pretty popular Green Day song. I'm a big Green Day fan. I knew I was going to put a Green Day song in there, and I realized I could pick Dookie, which came out in 1994, or their newest album, which literally just came out in 2024. I think they're still putting out great stuff. And to me, they are very much an example of a pop punk band. That song in particular just starts out with that great bass. And it's just, I just love the way they play with so much emotion, and truthfully still do after all these years. Their new album is it may not be as good as Dookie, which I consider to be a classic, but it is really, really good. But for the playlist, I think Longview is a great song to kind of show that transition into pop punk. Which brings us back to Triz.
Again, two great choices. I don't know as much about Rank and File as I do everybody else we've named, but listen to a couple songs. I know that one. It is a great song. So I'm gonna veer off the beaten path here. Everything we've named has not only been post-punk, but it actually has been pop punk. I'm going to name a band that is post-punk in the fact that they came out in 83 or so and evolved from punk, but they didn't stick with it. They might be giants. And again, too many songs to pick from, but I'm picking one with a personal story. I'm picking Your Racist Friend. And living in Joliet, it's easy to come across great people. It's also easy to come across really terrible people. And in certain situations in bars, you can walk up to somebody and say, hey, this is not the time nor the place. Sometimes you can throw them out. Sometimes you just have to turn your back and walk away. And this song is about the time when you take 3 steps away and decide, you know what? No. And you turn around and say something to the people who are being terrible. And that's what this song is about. And that's what I love about it. There's time to take action, and you and your racist friend are not allowed here.
That's awesome. I
Agreed.
love that band. Love that song.
I love that story too. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's a
me
good
too.
one. All right. So as is often the case, I say something that I don't finish my thought. So the rank and file, the only reason I knew they were so hated is because Alejandro Escovedo told a story about them as being one of the most hated bands of the time. So there's my finishing my thoughts so that I don't have to have a post facto. And this song isn't nearly as deep as what Triz just said, but I was excited to be able to choose something by the Gun Club, sort of progenitors of psychobilly or the country punk influences. And that's sort of the cool thing about post-punk is some of the music could have sounded punkish, but they were pulling in influences other than rock. So you start to see country being pulled in. And I was thinking about this when Triz, you were talking about that huge record collection you have and all the different genres, sort of very apt for the post-punk movement. So and this is just a fun song by them, Sex Beat, from Fire Love from 1981. I'm going to probably butcher the lyric, but near the end of the song, one of my favorite lines is, "We can fuck forever, but you'll never take my soul," or something like that. It's a really great song. One of my
Well,
favorite earlier bands for that
do
country
it.
punk sound.
What did you say, Triz? I'm sorry, it cut out.
If that wasn't the real verse, you should use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that band really at all. I kind of recognize the name of the band, but I love the title of the song. So I'm looking forward to listening to that one. My final choice for the playlist is the song The Weekend by the band Modern Baseball from their album Sports, which came out in 2012. So this is a much more recent pop punk band, pop punk album. I feel like if you haven't listened to Modern Baseball and you like Green Day or you like Violent Femmes, this is a great band to listen to because I think they're just kind of an heir to those bands, and they've continued with that type of kind of. It's not necessarily fun music because there's a lot of some of the lyrics are a little rough, a little depressing, but they've got a great sound. And I discovered Modern Baseball, I think, through my daughter. I think she may have recommended a song from them. And I've listened to a number of their albums now since then, and Sports is probably my favorite of them. So we're going to put on The Weekend from Modern Baseball, which takes us to our finale, the final song for the playlist. And the honor goes to Mike Trizna.
So the final song will be another, I mean, I don't know how many favorite bands somebody can have, but another one of my favorite, the Pogues. I saw Mojo Nixon, the Pogues, and the Violent Femmes in a triple bill when I was 17 years old. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
Wow.
But like Chris was saying, the Pogues could have easily been considered a punk band. However, they didn't stick with the 3 chords and a scream. They had something to say. They were more than just political. They had insights. And this one is called Sunny Side of the Street. And this is a personal thing with Shane McGowan, deciding that every time somebody told him, stop drinking, stop doing drugs, stop playing music, you can be better than this, he had an internal struggle. And his internal struggle told him, you know what? I'm happy drinking and taking drugs and writing music. And this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And so I'm no longer conflicted. I'm on the sunny side of the street, whether you like it or not.
Huh.
It's not for everyone. And I don't mean the song. I mean, the thinking. The thinking is not for everybody, but I love the fact that when he was 25 years old, he realized what he was going to do for the next 40 years, whether other people liked it or not.
And he did. He pretty much drank and sang himself to death, having passed away just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, well, he lived a heck of a lot longer than anyone thought he would.
Yes, he did, and put out some fantastic music.
Yes,
it's a great choice.
All right, well, speaking of great choice, Mike, I think that was a great theme for a playlist. Both Chris and I this was a little tougher, I think, for both of us because it's not the genre we necessarily go to when we start putting together our own playlist, but it caused me for sure to go through my own music collection and find stuff that I thought would work. And I think it's going to be one that people really should download and listen to. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing all of them together as when I'm driving. And if you don't mind, I'm going to touch back on something Chris said. One of the things, whether it's post punk or pop punk, but post punk for the most part, the amount of different styles of post punk there are. There's synth, there's jazz, there's pop, there's Celtic like the Pogues, comedic like the Dead Milkmen, folk. It's amazing that the Ramones and the Sex Pistols, and although you said the Clash are post-punk, they were also part of the punk movement.
Right.
But those three bands and just a few more, it's amazing what just a few bands in the mid-'70s were able to inspire in the late 70s, early 80s and beyond. And like it took three chords, and then it took all of the music in the world to create post-punk.
Yeah, it really did kind of blow up the idea of genres in general, in my opinion, because punk is definitely the progenitor of No Depression, all country type music, which is absolutely the kind of stuff I love, and I know Chris loves. I know you do too, as far as that goes. And you're right, it all came from there. While at the same time, you had bands like Green Day doing something completely different, and it is amazing that the whole idea behind punk was that nobody really knew how to play their instruments, and they just screamed with a lot of emotion, and that just did what it did and put us in a position to put together a playlist like this.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, me too. So the next segment of our show is our recommendations. This season, Chris and I have been recommending songs from the decade of the 90s. This is our 7th episode, and we will be making pop culture recommendations from 1997. What do you got?
Well, to correct you right off, it's not necessarily just songs. It's any sort of pop culture, so movies, books, whatever. And I went with something that probably doesn't surprise you, nominally a kid's movie, but I would argue much, much more than that. I went with Princess Mononoke by Miyazaki. Done a lot of kids type animation movies. I think Disney purchased Studio Ghibli or Ghibli, however you pronounce it. But Princess Mononoke is one of the more serious and deep of these types of movies that I've seen. I don't even think you could really rightly consider it a kids movie. I mean, it's got some pretty violent stuff going on in it. It's got some good versus evil. There's a lot of environmentalism themes throughout it. It's a great, great movie. It's one of my favorites, and it was hard not to choose it. I know I often have chosen kids' movies, but I think I made my kids watch this, and they're probably like, "What the hell are you doing to us, Dad? This is like kind of fucked up." But yeah, I think this movie exemplifies the best of Miyazaki and his directorial style, the themes that he likes to cover. And this one definitely leans more towards the adult side of things. So Princess Mononoke is my choice.
Is that the one that starts out with a scene where they're like chasing somebody on horseback?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, someone gets an arrow in the head, like in the first 5 minutes or so. Yeah,
No,
I did the same thing.
Very likely, yeah.
Movie.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I had the kids. I was like, "Hey, let's watch a Studio Ghibli movie," and then I was like, "Hey, let's pause this for a second. Maybe we'll find something else." It's a wonderful movie, but it is. I think you're right. I think it's an adult animated feature for sure.
I've never even heard of it. I just wrote it down. I'm going to look it up.
My recommendation from 1997 is a graphic novel. The graphic novel is Ghost World, written by Daniel Close. It was considered very much an underground type of work, but if you go online and look up, 50 greatest graphic novels, it makes that list almost every time, regardless of what website you go to. I really think that the graphic novel captures the explosion of irony that happened in the mid to late 90s. The main characters are all kind of assholes. It's got the two lead characters are two girls that are out of high school or just graduating high school, looking to go to college. It was made into a film that came out in 2001, which I very much liked, and actually saw the movie before I read the graphic novel. I think that film was one of the first movies that Scarlett Johansson was ever in as a lead character anyway. Steve Buscemi was in that movie. I guess the lead was Thora Birch, who's done some other work. And the film was the same way. You kind of disliked just about everybody involved. But it is, when you read the graphic novel, it really draws you in, and you really want to kind of see what these people are going to do. Really, in my opinion, I guess it's an heir to punk literature, because graphic novels were very much, I think, that version of things in writing, like R. Crumb, like those kind of things that came out around the same time that punk music was coming out. This was later, obviously 1997, but the Daniel Close, I think, really, he clearly read a lot of those kind of things, those underground comics when he was growing up, and Ghost World is an extension of all of it. So my recommendation is the graphic novel Ghost World, which did come out in 1997.
It's time for staff picks.
Just around the corner from you.
Tom and I are trying to recreate the experience going into a record store, video store, or whatever, and up on the board are recommendations or picks, by staff members telling you what new stuff to check out. So each week, Tom and I try to highlight something new that has come out or is just about to come out. So I'll start us off. So my choice is Whitney Houston's National Anthem by Matt Nathanson. Didn't know a whole lot about him. I've dove into his music a little bit. He sings this particular song with the Indigo Girls, which I think adds a lot to it. It's got a political feel to it, a little bit of looking back. It almost makes me feel like the Reagan era type of referencing back to it. It's this idea that one of the lines is when your father's president got elected. I don't know why I always sort of think of Reagan that way. Really great song. That's my choice. Whitney Houston's National Anthem by Matt Nathanson and the Indigo Girls.
My staff pick for this episode is an acoustic album that is coming out on March 7th. So it should be later this week when this drops. The album is Foxes in the Snow by Jason Isbell. Chris and I have talked at length and ad infinitum about how great a songwriter Jason Isbell is. I'm really looking forward to this album because it is being billed as being an acoustic piece of work, and he's great with his band, and I love almost everything he does, but this one I am really looking forward to. Which takes us to our playlist picks. For every episode, Chris and I each pick a song for our running playlist for season 6, and my pick for the ongoing playlist is Self-Esteem by The Offspring from their album Smash from 1994. It's just got a great opening, this particular song. And I wrote down in the outline, I think it's a great shouting song. It's a song you can shout along to with the band as you play it as loud as possible. I think it's a good pick. I think it matches up with the theme of our special playlist. And it's one of the songs that I thought about adding to that list and decided to hold on to it and put it into season 6.
I went with one of my favorite bands, Titus Andronicus, out of New Jersey. I went from their album The Monitor, which has a loose Civil War theme to it, and easily one of my favorite songs on there is A More Perfect Union. It starts off with some old audio from speeches, and then it just takes off from there. I love the fact that it's changes tempo about 70,000 times. I mean, they pause and then they go again. There's actually, I asked Tom about this before, there's a clear reference to Springsteen musically and lyrically at one point in the song, which I thought was cool. It's just a great song. It's 7 minutes long, so it's going to certainly be, I couldn't find a shorter song on this album. I could have, but all my favorite ones are in the 7 to 8 minute range. I think this is the peak of what they did. They continue to put out some decent music. I still like them, but I thought this album was brilliant. So going with A More Perfect Union, which would be my political comment. That's not where we're at now, by Titus Andronicus.
So those songs will be added to the season 6 playlist, which you can find streaming on Spotify, on Apple Music, on Amazon Music, and YouTube Music, as will our special playlist, You'll be able to search for that as a third song playlist. Not sure the title of the actual playlist at this point, but the subtitle will be a third song in playlist. So if you search that, you should be able to find it on all those streamers. All of that stuff should be out by the time you listen to this episode. Triz, we really want to thank you for appearing, being a guest on this show. I'm very happy that you were able to be here. I hope people listen to the episode and follow your links on our website. And I hope you can come back sometime.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Third Song In is recorded in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Joliet, Illinois. You can email us at thirdsongin@gmail.com. We would appreciate any feedback you can give us, recommendations, responses to our playlist picks, or recommendations. Send us a joke. We'd also ask that you follow us wherever you listen to your podcast. Rate and review us. Download the episode. That helps a lot. We are streaming on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and on YouTube Music. Please rate us. Give us all of your stars.
You can check out our if you could check out our website, thirdsonginpodcast.com. You'll be able to see all the picks that we made in today's episode. We'll also have direct links to all the information about Triz and all the events going on at his pub in Joliet.
We also have a Facebook page. You can find us under Third Song In, and you can subscribe to our blog on Substack.
Very much thank you for joining us today, Mike, and look forward to hearing this when it comes out on March 3rd.
You've been listening to Third Song In. Thanks for listening. Hey, if you guys like the blues, you'd really love Blues Hammer.